everyone, and welcome to the Evolve with Emily show YouTube channel. The best way to support the show on this YouTube channel is to subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment, and or share it with a friend. I hope that you guys enjoy this episode, and whichever way you choose to support the show, I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much. I hope that today's message and episode brings some bit of positive change to your life. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Evolve with Emily show. I'm your host, Emily Hayden, and I'm really stoked for today's podcast because I have two repeat guests on today. You guys know them. They are Hannah and Amanda, the Evolvex coaches. And today we're going to dive into some topics like getting your family and friends on board with your goals, finding in-person community who share the same values as you, sobriety, what doing the work looks like, burnout, and handling stressful situations, amongst some other things that may come up as we chat. So everybody, please welcome Amanda and Hannah to the show. Welcome, guys.
Hi. Thank you.
Of course. So let's start the show with some gratitude. And I'll go first while you guys think. So today, I think I want to express the most gratitude for the tools and habits that I've built in my life that I'm able to utilize when life gets rocky or life gets a little crazy, because, you know, I've had some rocky or crazy moments recently where, you know, previously I may have handled that one way, and instead, even though it was the really hard option in the moment, and in the moment I would have much rather, like, you know, turned on Netflix or scrolled on my phone or whatever, instead I was able to turn to these really good tools and habits that actually made me happier, made me feel better. And it didn't feel good in the moment. It didn't feel good to bust out cardio when I didn't feel like it in the moment, or to pick up the book, or to not just numb out on Netflix. But what it did was it produced a better version of me today. And so today I woke up feeling good and clear and excited for this week, excited for this podcast. So I, normally I say I'm, grateful for the different things in my life, but today I really am grateful for the tools that I've worked so hard to put inside my little toolkit to utilize in my life. So what are you guys grateful for?
I want to piggyback off of that. I feel very grateful for the exact same tools, even something as simple as I feel like now, as soon as like I wake up, I just voice it like in my head, like I'm so grateful for this and grateful for that, and just being awake and stuff like that. And so I could definitely relate to that. Also, just being very grateful for the different things that my body can do right now, as far as just moving and just being alive and just being, healthy. And so I'm just really grateful for kind of the journey that I've been on with my body and all that it does and how it functions and all that. So yeah, that's me for today.
I love that. I'm going to go into thinking about like the relationships that I have in my life, whether that be my husband, my friends, you guys, my dog, who, if you're watching.
She's so cute. If you guys are watching on YouTube, you get to see Elsie. She's so cute. She's a little white Frenchie. She's not too little though. She actually looks pretty stocky.
She's 23. 22. We went to the vet the other day. She's 22 pounds of like sturdy density.
Yeah.
100%. But I recently went home for 10 days to visit, and that's the longest I've ever been away from her. So she will not leave me alone now that I'm attached. But I'm definitely thankful for the relationships that I have in my life. Just building strong foundations through other people, which you can lean on and use support from in times of need, or when you're just not feeling like yourself. Or when you just need to have a good time. So definitely very thankful for the relationships that I have in my life. And something I'll call myself out on in gratitude is something I need to improve on is actually feeling it. Because, it's so easy to say, oh, I'm really grateful for Elsie. I'm really grateful for my friends. I'm really grateful for my apartment or whatever. But it's one thing to say it or write it in your journal, but it's another thing to sit with it for a minute. And that's something I definitely am going to dedicate some time to today.
Oh, I love that. And that's so coach-like of you to say, hold on, let me call myself out on this and show where I can improve. I think, that's what makes you guys both incredible coaches, is the fact that you're willing to take a good look at yourself in the mirror and say, okay, where is it that I can improve? How can I learn? And how can I be better? I think some people sometimes get too comfortable in their craft, where then they stop being a student in their craft. And I think no matter how much of an expert you end up being one day, if you keep that student mentality, that's where you have the opportunity to learn. Something that we talk about a lot in our Evolvex program is just having that student mentality, because the second that you're able to say, I don't know, now you have an opportunity to learn something that you didn't know. So it's great that you guys have that humble attitude. So I want to go into our first topic of today, which is getting family and friends on board with your goals. So you guys each have a full client roster right now, and this is kind of a constant topic that keeps coming up with your clients. So can you kind of express first what the clients are feeling when they bring this up to you? You know, what is it that they're seeking to get from their family and friends, and how do you guys coach those clients through that?
I think one of the biggest thing that pops up is just general understanding. Whenever you start something, a lot of people actually, it's really nice when you're part of something like Evolvex, you can lean on that. Like I'm in a 90-day program, so I can't drink right now. I have to go to the gym. Like I have to. It's 90. You can kind of put the emphasis on that. But what do you do when the 90 days are over? And it's just a part of your lifestyle now, but yet you still need your family and friends to accept it. Instead of it's like, oh, hey, I'm done with this program, with this 90 days, with this challenge or whatever. Instead, I think it's really important to tie it to your identity and who you are as a human being. And then they recognize that. I mean, I am the fitness person in my family. I am the person who makes good choices. Like, so they just come to expect that at this point, but that wasn't always that way. And it wasn't easy to make that shift at the beginning because, you know, not everybody agreed or sat or acted in that same manner. So it definitely makes it a challenge. But I think one of the biggest things is just staying strong in who you are. And again, like I said, tying it to your identity. So whenever somebody doesn't, there's like, oh, don't go to the gym, just come shopping or come hang out with us or come to this movie or go drink or whatever. Instead, it's along the lines of telling yourself like, but I'm the person who goes to the gym. I'm like the healthy person who works out. So then it's easier to say, I would love to, and I would love to do that when it fits in my schedule. But right now, today, my commitment is to go to the gym, but let's find a time where I can go do that with you. I think that that's really powerful. So that, because sometimes people feel left out.
Yeah.
Change. They feel like you're leaving them behind.
I love, yeah. And I was just going to say, I love that you give a real, you know, conversational example, because I think that's such a loving way to honor yourself and set that boundary for yourself, but also be there for your friends. Cause you're not just saying, no, I can't go with you, I'm going to the gym. You're saying, I would love to go with you. I can't go right now, but let's find a time that does work. Let's find a time when we can connect. So you're still, you know, setting that boundary for yourself while also showing up for them and showing that it's important to you to make time for them. And I think when you show that versus just being defensive and saying, no, I can't do this because fitness comes first, you know, if you express it that way, that's probably going to go a lot differently than if you express it from a place of love and from a place of desiring to connect with them and desiring to fulfill those needs as well. So I love that. It's such a good point.
And to go off that too, I think it kind of goes back to your lifestyle, right? So it could be one of those where maybe you know that your friends want to do X, Y, Z. And so you fit it into your schedule to be like, okay, well, I'm going to do this. So then I'm going to work out in the morning or I'm going to work out at night. So it's just about fitting that into your schedule and making both ends work, because like you said, it's not that you can't do anything or anything like that, but you kind of turn it into a lifestyle to go beyond. And then also something I noticed with my clients too, it's not necessarily that they don't have support from their friends, but maybe it's something where it kind of goes back to what you said, Hannah, as far as like feeling left out. Where like an example I can think of is, I know a client has her boyfriend that they typically do XYZ together. They eat, they drink, this and that, and it's not so much that he doesn't support her. She just is so used to just acclimating to what they do. But I think it's just goes back to like staying strong in like your goals and just doing what you need to do, right? And just acting from a place of love and just being like, well, we can't do XYZ anymore, but I don't need to drink you just because you're drinking, or I don't, just because you're eating this doesn't mean I have to. We could eat together. It could still be different. And so I think sometimes I'm seeing that sometimes clients are thinking that they have to mold themselves into what they're familiar with. But it's definitely just being strong and like what your goals are and like how you want to show up. And something I think is really cool that I've seen throughout the program is people's or clients, either relationship or friendships, they kind of are influenced by that client, right? Like
That's
I remember,
cool.
yeah, I remember a couple of clients where their boyfriend realized she's like reading all a bunch and this and that, and now he's reading, and and now they can share something different that they didn't necessarily know that they like to do together. So I think it's just leading by example and just being true to who you are. And that might influence someone to better their lifestyle as well.
That's beautiful. And a few key points that I want to bring out of what you just mentioned. Number one, being able to be inside of an environment and still stand true to who you are and your priorities in life, right? So going into this environment, even if it's something as simple as a restaurant with your boyfriend, right? Being able to stand strong and say, okay, I committed to myself. I committed to my goals. So yes, I'm going to choose the grilled chicken with no oil and no extra butter and some veggies while you eat a delicious burger and fries. And I'm going to stand strong in that. And for a lot of people, that's really difficult to do. But what you're doing there is you're not just sticking to your health and your fitness goals, but you're actually showing yourself that you matter so much that you're going to stand true to who you are and to your convictions, to your priorities, even when it's not too comfortable. Because maybe for a lot of people, that could be very uncomfortable. And then the other part of what I want to bring out is you mentioned how one person inside of a friendship or relationship can influence another. And a lot of people ask that question like, hey, I'm really into my fitness and personal development. How do I get my significant other on board? Or how do I convince them to hit the gym, whether it's a guy asking that for his girlfriend or a girl that wants to get her boyfriend to read or something. And I think you answered it really beautifully in saying that you lead by example. I have definitely noticed in my life and my relationships with my clients, even that if I try to push something on them, it makes them go the opposite direction. Whereas if I simply allow the experience of me and what that thing is having an effect on me, if I allow that experience to impact them in a very natural and organic way without ever even talking about it, they end up going down that route anyways, because they're like, wow, I really see how much it's had an impact in your life. And I would love to have that positive impact in my life as well. Whether it's getting more active and hitting the gym, or it's picking up a book and reading, or it's signing up for a therapy session. I remember specifically, I have one friend in particular who, I knew her as a certain type and way of friend. And then we always would meet up and have coffee and such. And then I just remember a year later having such a different experience of her. And she mentioned how she'd been going to some deep therapy and working on some really deep interpersonal work. And it literally changed her so much as a human. She's still her, but just such a better, more open, more connected human that it really inspired me to revisit that and to go do that for myself as well. So I think, it's important that as you grow and work on yourself and you choose to do these things that are great for you, that you focus on, like you said, leading by example, because I really do believe that that's how you make the impact. You don't make an impact by just barking at people. You make an impact by actually staying kind of quiet and just leading the way with your actions.
Yeah, I feel like I can personally relate to that in a life-changing way, because the only reason I ever started going to the gym was it was superficial at the beginning, but my husband started getting back into working out. We were dating at the time in college, and he started getting back into workout, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's getting hot again, and here I am, I go lifting out. I was like, well, I need to go to the gym. And he never once said, hey, you should come to the gym with me. I just like, can I go with you? Because I was influenced by him, and if that wouldn't have ever happened, I wouldn't be where I'm at in life at all. Literally completely changed the trajectory of my life. And that was 100% leading by example. He never once tried to force me into it or recommend it or anything. It was just something I was decided to do based on what I saw him doing.
Wow, that's awesome. And it's so true. It's once you see it having such a positive impact in someone else's life, or like you said, sometimes it starts superficial. Let's just be real. Sometimes it's oh, I just want to look better, feel better. Or hey, some people are I want to make my ex jealous. That's real, right? We've all been there. And hey, if that's what gets you started, so be it. Let it. I have a feeling though that the reason you stick around will be so much deeper and so much more real than that. Clearly you've been doing this for years now. So all right, let's talk about finding in-person community who shares the same values. So let's talk about from, a coaching perspective, when you're speaking to a client and they maybe express to you how they're alone or they feel a little isolated. Why do you guys believe that it's important for them to find community who share the same values as them?
I think it definitely makes chasing your goals 10 times harder if, again, everyone around you maybe doesn't necessarily actively not support you, but they aren't encouraging you either. So whenever you have people in your corner who are doing what you do, it makes life a lot easier. I can speak from experience living in a really small town, being a fitness oriented person. It was me, myself, and I. I went to the gym, etc. And then, but moving to a bigger city, I actually have made friends, and I can now go to the gym and train with people or talk about training like with people in person instead of just on Instagram. So, having that community and like-mindedness surrounding you only helps level you up even more.
Mm-hmm. And to piggyback off that, I was just going to say, I feel like, when you do have the community of somebody that essentially shares the same goals, you guys can feedback off each other. You guys can piggyback off each other. And those people can, turn out to be expanders in your life, right? And they make you realize, how you can level up, or maybe you're struggling, how you can change your mindset and things like that. So I think definitely having a community of people is so beneficial. And something that I feel like that has been coming a lot with my clients is you putting yourself out there, right? So maybe it's something like, oh, I don't know anyone in town and this and that. Well, it's not necessarily like, hey, you be my friend, but maybe it's literally you going out, like be somewhere that you enjoy, because naturally, whoever you run into, they're going to be obviously enjoy the same thing, right? So maybe it's going to a new gym, or maybe it's going to try a new yoga class or whatever, or a coffee shop. So that way you guys already have that one thing in common, which is like your environment and what you decide to do. And that can kind of organically spark a conversation. And I think that's such a cool way to just to meet new people and have that community.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying is really powerful, both of you guys, because I think we all have had the experience of feeling isolated, alone, not having that friendship and community. And when you are going after really big things in life and you feel that isolation, sometimes it can feel really heavy to carry what you're carrying. Whereas if you just get in a community of other people that are going after the same things as you, and when you watch them do it, you feel motivated and inspired. There's this sense of ease that comes with it, because it's the normal, right? So if you're in a group of people and they're all going after these goals, it feels more normal to be doing that, versus you feel like you're maybe at the top of the totem pole with the people around you because you're the only one going after a better life, trying to create a better mindset, a better emotional, headspace, better physical attributes. And I think it's important to, surround yourself with those people, because once you do that, like I said, your load seems like it kind of lightens a little bit. And the truth is the load's actually the same, but when you're around other people that are doing it more with ease, you're able to say, oh, okay, so I can do this too, right? Like I remember back in my very beginning of my bikini competition days, when I would be the only person around me that's dieting, and everyone kind of like ask questions and like almost put this like pressure on me, like, oh, well, why are you doing this? And how are you doing this? And isn't that hard? And wow, that would be so difficult for me. And sometimes I think I would maybe take a little bit of that on and be like, oh, like, yeah, I guess it is kind of hard, Whereas when I get around a bunch of other people dieting, or even better, when I was an amateur, getting around like a pro who's been doing this for years, when like they don't even think twice about like the diet, And so their like just normal way of living made me raise my level of living and raise my mindset around it too. I even think about back in the day when I lived in LA, at the very beginning of my time there, I had a little group of friends who we all did fitness coaching and YouTube and things like that. And we decided just to start doing work days together. So we do the same work that we would do alone, but do it together. And now all of a sudden, when I was sitting there stumped on like an editing problem, I would just kind of say it out loud. And one of them would come along and say, oh, just do this. And in a second, my problem was fixed, right? Or you have that like client, right? Where you're having issues with this client. And so you can just bounce feedback off of another great coach. That's why you guys, I think, work really well together, and why we all work well together, because we can bounce ideas off of each other. And when you do that, it's just, there's so much more that can spark up from those conversations than you just being alone in your own head, trying to figure it all out yourself. So I think we've all experienced the power of community and how important it is to have in your life, whether you can do that in person, which I think is 100% ideal, or if right now you need to create that community online. The great thing is, I've been able to create an amazing community online that have turned into in-person relationships, right? One of my Evolvex Worldwide clients, I got to meet at Summer Shredding, and the only reason we had those amazing conversations and hugs and tears and all those things was because we had built this relationship online. So have you guys experienced that, where you've built a relationship that was at first online and then got to be in person?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh yeah, with each other, of course.
I got excited. Yes, Amanda, obviously, you, Emily, as well. Like, so it's
Yeah.
just so fun actually to meet you guys in person after knowing you online for so like Emily, I've been following you forever, and then Amanda, I've been following you for quite some time as well, and like feeling like I actually know you in the meeting in person, and it's like we never missed it. It's like we met before.
Right.
Yeah.
I forget sometimes that I haven't met people in person.
Yeah.
Like when when we were all together, I did not even realize that Hannah and I were just meeting. And I didn't realize that you guys had just met for the first time either. Like we literally felt like, I don't know,
Yeah.
we had been friends for a long time.
And I think that all stems to at the beginning from being open, like Amanda said earlier, to putting yourself out there. You might have to be the person who takes the first step, whether that's in person or online, like messaging that person in response to their DM about a funny meme or their dog or a workout or whatever. Like, don't be afraid to put yourself out there in order to make new. That's how I've made basically all of my friends here in Virginia Beach since moving here a year ago. It's through either seeing them at the gym and saying, "Hi, I'm Hannah. You look really cool. I like to lift."
Yeah. I like to live too.
Like meeting them that way, or whether it be online. Actually, one of my best friends out here in Virginia Beach, we met online like a few years ago, and we kind of kept in touch. And then whenever I was moving here, like it just coincidence happened that she also still lived here, and we now get to be like real life best friends. So it's like
Aw.
so fun to like see those relationships that can, build and then expand. Once you're able to, if and when you're able to meet in person, and if you're not, like it just keeps building. And like we said, it's like you've already met anyway. So
Yeah, I have one friend who she came up to me at the gym and she was like, "Hey, like I followed you on Instagram for a while, my name's Lindsay," and I'll just throw it out there, it's Lindsay. And it was funny because we met, we had a little chat, and then like I want to say maybe a few weeks later, I saw her on the treadmill and the sun was about to set, and I always go and watch sunsets, and I was like, I'm just gonna ask this girl to go watch the sunset with me. So I walk up, I was like, "Hey," she's like, "Hey," and I'm like, "You want to go watch the sunset?" She's like, "Yep." I was like, "All right." We just went and watched the sunset. It was incredibly romantic, and the rest is history. But yeah, so it, like you said, sometimes it just kind of takes, she put herself out there by introducing herself to me. And then I put myself out there by getting nervous and walking up and asking a random girl to go watch a sunset with me. So yeah, it was a good time. I miss those California sunsets. Honestly, they're so pretty.
I imagine I miss the sunset as a whole because we live like towards the beach here in BB, so
Oh,
it's like downward.
yeah.
So the sun that's like over a hill and kind of over like I don't really see it. I'd
Yeah.
actually cool sunrise if I could get my butt out of bed early enough.
Right. I honestly like chasing sunsets is one of my favorite things. It's one of those, little things that makes me so happy, brings my spirit alive. So here, even though I'm not in the most ideal spot to watch sunsets, I will go like chase it, right? I'll go find a parking garage and just park at the top of the parking garage and watch it. And just doing that at the end of the day, whether it was a good day or a bad day, it just, it's like the little cherry on top of the whole Sunday,
Oh, I like it.
Yeah. So, okay, I want to get into the next topic of sobriety. So, as we were talking about, some of the things we wanted to discuss on today's podcast, you guys had both mentioned that sobriety was a topic that kept resurfacing in your conversations with your clients. So, Hannah, can you speak to some of the conversations that you've had and why you feel it's an important topic to talk about, and maybe why it keeps coming up, and kind of how you coach your clients through the sobriety goals that they've set for themselves?
Yeah. So I think one of the most important things is if you've set your sobriety goal of like no drinking, then you're coming from somebody who drinks socially, et cetera, if that's your background, you have to recognize that like it's going to be hard and you're going to be tempted 100%. Like it's not going to feel great at the beginning. And you look at those people who like don't drink or drink not so often or whatever, and you're like, wow, I don't know how they do it. Like I drink very rarely. So I get like comments about that often. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you can like handle being around out in bars, around drunk people, and you're sober. And I don't know. It's just one of those things like with nutrition, with training, with all of these habits, they get easier the more you do them. They become habitual, more ingrained in your brain, and it's just easy. But when first starting, just walk into it knowing like, hey, this is gonna be a challenge, but it's not one that I'm strong enough for it. It's not one that's going to overcome me. But in my moments of weakness, whenever I'm really heavily tempted, this is what I'm going to say or do. Again, I am really big into identity and habits, so I tied in my identity. So for like, let's say you're starting Evolvex, sobriety is one of the requirements for the program. Okay, well, for the next 90 days, I don't drink. I'm working on better improvement of myself. Therefore, I am the person who like doesn't really drink. It's not really something I'm interested in right now. So then whenever that moment of temptation comes, you remind yourself like, oh, hey, I'm in this 90-day program where I don't drink because I have other goals right now. That doesn't mean I'll drink never again. That does mean that like right now, this isn't my focus. It doesn't align.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And what about you, Amanda?
Well, I was gonna say what I love about the requirement of sobriety during this program. We don't really tie it into like nutrition or training, but it's really the whole purpose is just to have the most clear mindset and clarity during this program. And that is something that I have seen that's around with these clients so far, that have just been life changing, right? And it's like Hannah said, it's not like you can't ever drink again or ever smoke again, but what you learned is your why behind it, right? Is it just a numbing agent? Is it just a bad habit? Is it this and that, right? And so beyond the program, now you can realize, oh, it was just a numbing habit. And so throughout the 90 days, you built a new habit to, say, for example, just to unwind, right? Mindlessly unwind. And now you found new habits to do that. And so when you do decide to drink or smoke, it's intentional and it's not just out of a bad habit. And I think that's something that is so cool to watch our clients do right now, is to realize, oh, I realized I was just doing it out of habit and I have no idea why I do it. Or I realized I was just using it as medicine. So now that they can identify, why they were doing it or why it was a habit, now they can start going into the other work of themselves that they need to do. So I think that's such a cool perspective that clients have been able to have with the sobriety. And I know something that one particular client is doing is making it very what's the word, hard or inaccessible to get to, right? So maybe it's something like alcohol or smoking weed. They literally put it somewhere away that's going to be so inconvenient for them to get. And because you know what, sometimes even with a diet or nutrition, sometimes just to get started, you do have to avoid it. You know what I mean? And I think just like with a diet, don't buy XYZ, don't have it in your house. But just like Hannah said, the more that you work on it, the more that you create it into the habit, it becomes easier and you're able to build that discipline, and you're able to buy things or you're able to drink again, knowing that it's not going to just be unintentional, or knowing you're not going to have the whole bottle or the whole stick of cookies or whatever that may be. So yeah, I think that's been a really cool part of watching these clients go through sobriety, is the mental clarity of it.
Yeah. And, everything in this program was created with the most amount of intention in order to help people live the most intentional lives. So just to reiterate what we're all saying here is we take you from this place of, maybe you have bad habits that you're unaware of. Maybe you don't realize that you're using it to numb yourself or using it to escape or using it to not think about all the things that are actually going on in your life, right? And so by taking this away, we're not saying these things are bad, you can't do these things again, or placing any judgment whatsoever on these things or on the people. No, that's not, the goal at all. The goal is to help give you a clear headspace, a clear mindset, and to give you power back over the habits that you choose to have in your life, so that if you're choosing to engage in something, it's with intention and it's with purpose and it's with moderation. Like you said, whether it is weed, alcohol, or a sleeve of cookies, right? If you're going to have a cookie, have a cookie. If you're going to have a drink, right? If you're going to choose to do these different lifestyle habits, then just make sure that it's a conscious act and not an unconscious pattern that you have, because a lot of people want to create better relationships, have a better business, start these new goals for themselves, but they're being held back and they don't even realize it's from the unconscious patterns in their lives. So what we help them do is really break free from these patterns and these habits that simply are not serving them. And then what they do after the 90 days is they get to reintegrate the things that they believe make their life better, and believe that, they can enjoy in their life, and have time to have a drink if they want to have a drink, or enjoy some cookies if they want to have cookies, but now they have power and intention over it versus that thing having power over them. I had one of our clients on the last mentorship call that we had. She shared how she's been sober through, we're about halfway through the program now, and she's been sober for like the first time. And she was in tears expressing how she didn't realize that she was just numbing her way through life. And she said, now I'm actually experiencing life. I'm experiencing moments and, things that make up the fullness of life that I haven't experienced before in a very long time. And just to see that shift was really incredible. So I think it's cool how something so simple as, hey, let's do a 90-day period where we refrain from the things that would usually numb our senses, numb our emotions, and let's get a mirror and let's look at these things. Let's take the hard look at the truth of how I feel and think and operate and how I show up for myself and for my friends and how I create boundaries and what my core values are and all these like really incredible life topics and character building traits. We really dive into these things in order to produce the happiest, most peaceful, most joyful, most fulfilled version of themselves. What are some just like realistic tips that you guys have for people that have the goal of sobriety and, are maybe they're still attending these outings or they're around people in pressure situations? What are some tips that you guys have for them for dealing with those pressure situations in regards to sobriety?
One of my, I think, most impactful ones I've heard back from a client about recently is not about maybe full on sobriety, but being more aware of the choice post program. So this client, her social circle definitely drinks on the week, socially drinks on the weekend regularly. You go out to dinner, you get a beer, like that kind of situation. So it's a very, very common part of everyday life. And I can connect with that because that's very much the same where I'm from. You go out for dinner, you get a beer, you go out at any point for a meal, you probably are going to get something, mimosa, what have you. But something we implemented that was very powerful for her is a question. And sometimes it's that simple, or a statement. So this statement is, I only drink when it's really worth it.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah. So basically, it comes down to like, are you drinking mindlessly because everyone else is?
Mm-hmm.
Are you smoking mindlessly because everyone else is? Like, what are you choosing to do? And is it actually your choice? Like, are you cognizant of your action? So in asking that question, that eliminates the, I'm gonna have a beer with dinner because everyone else is. Like, do you really want that, or are you just doing what everyone else is doing? Like, no, you don't really want it. You don't really need it. It doesn't really align with your day-to-day goals. But maybe it's your birthday, and so you want to have something. Okay, cool. That's absolutely worth it. Like, cool, you go right on ahead.
I think another, and I love this topic, I think another question to bring up could be, especially when it comes to drugs and alcohol and things like that, is, am I doing this to numb an emotion that I don't want to feel right now? Example, like, am I agitated with somebody or am I not really wanting to be at this dinner, right? So really just asking yourself that question of why do I want this drink? Why do I feel like, oh, I'm going to dinner, I can't wait to get a drink? Is it because I want to numb something I don't want to feel, or I'm feeling uncomfortable and so I want that to numb the uncomfortable feeling? Because if so, I think that can help you to say, okay, if I'm being honest, I'm doing it to numb something right now. And so I actually am going to respect myself enough to say, I can't have a drink right now because that's not how I want to participate in this, right? Like you're mentioning, you want to do it because it's worth it and you enjoy it and you would like to have a drink at dinner, right? Or try a new drink that tastes really great, right? So enjoy it with that kind of intention. And I think those, small pauses or small statements or small questions, like you said, can really bring the awareness to the reason of why you're doing what you're doing.
And just to go off that is really just like slowing down. I think sometimes, especially when we get social settings, we immediately think if somebody asks, do you want to drink? Yes. Or yeah, I want to fit in, or I want to feel comfortable, or this or that. But it's really slowing down and just, going back to like remembering or asking those questions like Hannah was saying, and really just taking the time to let your mind make a cautious decision rather than just like a mindless decision. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think just slowing down and just remembering your why or having that question is super helpful as well. And even if it is something like post program and you decide to have a drink, still slow down. That, and I think it's just also just. I think something I've learned personally too is because with competing and everything, I learned not to drink a lot, and I just don't drink a lot in general. And I think sometimes we think, oh, it's the only way we're going to fit in, but it doesn't have to be that way. You know what I mean? Like you can, and I think it's just also about like how you carry yourself, right? If you go in there and you're kind of like, oh, I kind of want to drink. Okay, maybe, oh, I don't know, maybe later. then you kind of lose that confidence. But when you go in there and you're firm and you're strong, and you start conversations, and you already are just having fun without having that drink, I think that can be so helpful too, with just that perspective of how you go in there.
Yeah.
I think people put emphasis on that fear of missing out
Mm.
when they're drinking. So I think too, it's like, what if you ask yourself the other side of the question? Like, okay, so my fear of missing out while drinking or engaging in what have you is I won't have as much fun. My friends will not like appreciate me as much. They won't have as much fun with me, etc., whatever. But then you have to ask yourself also, like, what are you missing out on if you say yes? Definitely the next morning's productivity or enjoyment.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely hitting your fitness or nutrition targets for the day. Alcohol is a very big deterrent to muscle growth. So if that's your goal, you're missing out on a little bit of growth there as well. And that's not to say you can't ever do it once again, but you're not, if you drink out of fear of missing out on a good time with your friends, you have to ask yourself, like, what else am I missing out on in my life that I've committed to based on this decision?
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a good point. And some realistic things that have helped me, even just having an alternative drink. Like I might, when everyone else is ordering, I'll say, I'll have a Diet Coke right now, or I'll start with a Diet Coke, right? Or something that I love is hot tea, because you drink it slower because it's hot and it's really warm. And there's something really soothing about having like a warm drink, especially if you add like a little bit of honey or something, or you could do like a decaf coffee, but having something that you can kind of like look forward to and enjoy, I found really helps me in those moments versus just drinking water, because sometimes water can be really bland, especially if you're out and everyone's drinking and having different, drinks that may look good to you. Having that like little source of, just something else for you to look forward to, I think can really help too.
I think too, if you have something like a seltzer water, people they won't even know.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay, so that is sobriety. Moving on to the next topic, we wanted to talk about doing the work and what that work looks like for you and how it impacts you. So, I'll give a recent example of myself and how I decided to turn to the work in order to help me out of a spot that I was in. So the work can be a bunch of different things. By the way, there is a book called How to Do the Work by Dr. Nicole. So I think we've all read that book, or we're all reading it. So definitely check that book out for all the listeners. But for me, the work can signify so many different things in my life that allow me to show up better for myself and for other people as well. I know that when I'm doing the work, I'm going to show up as the most patient, kind, and loving version of myself. Whereas when I'm not doing that work, that patient, kind, and loving, it's still there, but maybe it's not as great as when I'm doing the work, right? So for example, I, recently in my life, I came back from a trip, and when I came back, the feelings that I was experiencing were maybe like, tired and exhaustion. And when I'm tired and exhausted, I have less patience. When I have less patience, I might be more agitated. So all of these feelings that aren't really positive feelings. So in that moment, what I wanted to do, what like the, human version of Emily wanted to do, was relax on the couch and zone out to Netflix, right? That's one of the like numbing agents. And I think it's important to really recognize in your life what is like the thing that you do to turn off, and and I don't mean turn off as in relax. I mean, turn off as in avoid feelings or avoid different inner work that's going on. So for me, that may look like Netflix or scrolling on my phone or just kind of like zoning out in some way. And so that's what I wanted to do. And I always say, like, there's always two options in your hand, right? There's the red button option, which is saying no to all of your goals, no to your personal development, no to your personal growth, no to flourishing relationships. And then there's the green button, which is saying yes to all of those things. Yes to flourishing relationships, yes to personal growth and development, and yes to your goals. And so in the red button was all those numbing agents, and in the right button, the green button, was that personal work and growth. And what that looked like for me in that time was immediately unpacking and doing laundry, because an unclean house and clutter makes me anxious. It just does. That's who I am. And so that was really important for me to do, even though I was really exhausted. I did cardio, because cardio is one of those things that makes me happier, makes me better, gives me a more clear mindset. And I did it on the Peloton, and that's like the next level for me of like positive cardio, because for me, it's like a little bit bit of personal development because the instructors there are so positive and so loving, and they always just make me feel better than when I, before the bike. So I did that. I, went and meal prepped, went to the grocery store, and I did not want to do any of these things. I was tired. I was exhausted. I was not in the best mood. And yet I chose to do these things, not because I wanted to. I even kind of was just like, this sucks in the middle of it, but I did it knowing the result that it was going to produce. So for me, the work in that moment looked like doing these things that I know are self-serving. They're going to serve me in the future. Serving me in the moment may have been like, feeling better right away, which sometimes feeling better right away actually makes you feel worse later, right? So kind of what you were saying, Hannah, about looking at like, the cost and the benefit analysis of, what I'm going to do right now. The cost and the benefit analysis, if I had just zoned out on Netflix and laid on the couch and not unpacked and not meal prepped, is I would have been stressed. I would have been anxious. I wouldn't have had food for the week. I would have felt crappy from not getting some activity in. So in that moment, I had to choose to do that work. And what that work actually ended up producing was a version of me that is so much more clear-minded, so much more positive, excited to show up for work, excited to show up better for my relationships. So I found that identifying what your work is and what those things are for you, which could look different for everybody, is really important so that in those pressure moments and situations, you can rely on those healthy habits and tools and just simply choose to do it. And it's just a decision, and you don't have to like it, and you don't have to want to do it. But if you'll choose to do it, you'll be so much happier that you did. And just like you guys both mentioned, as you keep practicing choosing that harder option, it does get easier over time. So can you guys explain a little bit of what the work may look like for you guys? What are those things that you turn to in moments that are really difficult in order to, do the work and keep yourself in that best version of yourself?
I think for me, it's really what I've learned is it's me learning tools that make me proud, right? Or very recently I've realized it's just finding like my peace and choosing peace on purpose. So I'll kind of share an example. I the other night had a really bad panic attack, which I'm not someone who has anxiety or anything like that. And so the old me, or before I learned how to do the work or essentially find things that make me feel good or fulfill me, or just find things that commit to me, um the next day I and what I loved about what you were saying, Emily, is finding what you're trying to avoid. And I think for me, I've realized that sometimes I try to avoid like my feelings. So I'll just kind of shut off. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to talk to anyone. I'll cancel all my appointments. I just want to like sit in my sorrow and feel bad for me, right? And that's something I've learned that I would fall back on. Um, so in this example, that's something I normally do, but I woke up, it took me a minute to get out of bed, but then I realized, no, like I'm doing the work. I have the resources. I have the tools to get through this. And so I went back into things that make me feel good. So journaling, meditating, listening to positive podcasts, taking Bailey on a walk, being in nature, things of that sort. And what that really allowed me to do is find that clarity in my mindset again. And I think that's what kind of doing the work is having that clarity, having that peace in your mind, and being able to kind of dig deep to what that was stemming from, right? And so instead of just giving myself an excuse, oh, I had anxiety, that's that, like we just go on. Now I get to go deeper and really understand like what those feelings are coming from, realizing anxiety isn't an emotion, it's just how I feel at the moment. So what is the emotion attached to it, right? And for my example, it's fear or guilt or whatever it may be. But the point is, um, you're doing the work is opening yourself up to just learning things about you to go back into that inner peace. And something for me is I've really been working on listening and trusting my inner voice. And so that's something I was able to go into my little toolbox and say, hey, I know how to get back to this. Like I know how to bring my peace back. And I will say I feel like I've done a whole 360 from the other night, and I just have a new perspective,
Mhm.
and it really came from doing the work. It really came from like trusting yourself and knowing how to essentially make yourself feel better or get back into that place. And the thing is, it's not just in like that exact moment. You just realize it impacts so many different areas of your life. You know what I mean? Like for me, for example, I like to close off, but now that I'm learning that that was kind of like my numbing agent, now I can express myself. I don't like I can express myself in like my relationships or with my friendships or with you guys to be able to get to the root of the problem, and so that I can actually attack it rather than just live to learn with it. So I think that's been doing the work for me is learning how to manage it and not just to live with it and have like this excuse for myself, but really learning how to um, grow with the most like authentic version of yourself and not just trying to get past it.
I have to kind of reiterate something you said. You said get to the root of the problem, get to the root of the issue versus just numbing it, right? So I really want to reiterate that these things that we're talking about, like getting activity in, getting sunlight, going for a walk, meditation, these things are not to, it's not like a healthier way to escape. It's actually meant to help you face it, right? So these things are not just to fill up your time, but it's to help you get a clear mind so that when you get that clear mind, when you get back to that, clearest version of yourself, then you can address the things that are really there, those underlying emotions or fears or anxieties or whatever it is, so that you can take a real honest look at it. And I think for the people that have the heart and the desire to really take an honest look at themselves, I think they'll be able to see it. And I do think there are people that don't desire to see maybe the ugly parts of themselves, right? Because we all have parts that we're not proud of. We wouldn't like put that part on display for everyone to see, right? And we all have that. And so I think when you recognize that, it can help you to not have so much judgment towards yourself when you realize, oh, wow, I don't really respond well in these environments and I wish I responded better. Just acknowledge yourself and love yourself for that desire to do better, and then start figuring out, okay, what does that work? How do I get better at this? What do I need to do in order to respond better in these types of environments? Hannah, what about you in regards to doing the work?
Yeah, so I think one of the things is, so this is okay. This one's a double-edged sword. So whenever I need to work through something or need to address something, I have a double way of dealing with it that's good and bad. So first off, organization. That one's key for me. Is getting organized and getting my space organized specifically. But sometimes what I mean by that one can be bad is sometimes I'll say, well, I can't do this until everything's like set up and organized and good to go. So I think it's all about recognizing, like, even if something can be utilized in a positive or negative manner, like what way are you approaching it through? So recently mine has been just picking up, organizing, doing laundry, etc. That one's huge for me, is to declutter and clear my space, and then I can think. But again, it's like, am I actually doing that, or am I wandering around my apartment like half-assed picking stuff up to avoid dealing with anything?
That's such a good point, because like you said, I think even the healthy things can be used to avoid. So again, asking yourself that question, what's my intention behind what I'm doing right now?
Yeah, for sure. So like getting my space organized, putting away laundry that I know I've needed to put away for like a week or what have you, like doing the things that I don't want to do. And then also just journaling. And a lot of times on it, clear and honest, whenever I am in a bad headspace or dealing with something difficult, oftentimes my journaling doesn't have a resolution. There is no resolution at the end. It's just me getting it on paper and out of my head. And that's just a great release and a great way to kind of be like, okay, now I can think about it. Like now that I've gotten like all the big fears written out and like they're out of like my head where they're growing, and instead they're on paper where I can see them for what they really are. And then giving myself space to truly digest and think, rather than trying to journal in order to come up with a resolution or a solution to the problem. Instead, it's journal just to get it out.
Yeah.
That one's super powerful for me. And then also just like get outside, go on a walk. Huge, 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 especially if it includes my dog. Actually, it includes my dog. Then the last one's probably going to be, just like Amanda said, filling that headspace with positive reinforcement, whether that's podcasts, books, what have you, but finding something that helps me, even if I'm not feeling it, finding something that helps me think in the way that I know I typically do or should be thinking in the situation, but maybe my emotions are overriding that logic and I'm not able to do so. So finding something that helps me get back into that headspace.
Oh man, that's so good. I recently went to a friend's house this last weekend, and he had on his fridge, it was a whole list of the things that are doing the work for him. So there were things on there like what we're all mentioning, like breath work, meditation, exercising, sunsets, podcasts, like all these little things. And he actually had a whole list of it on a whiteboard. And then he would go through, and as he does it throughout the day, he writes a little check mark. And I was like, wow, this is so great, because if you ever find yourself in a hard spot, you can kind of look at your fridge and just say, well, did I do the work today? You know, and you can look and see, oh, I actually did not do the work today. And maybe that's why I'm in the spot, right? Or I've done, one thing today. Like, let me go do some of these things that are the work. And I think what it does is just, it helps you to stay really accountable to making sure that you're doing the things that make you your best self, because we all slip out of doing these things and doing these healthy habits that we know are great for us, but we'll be like, oh wow, it's been 2 weeks since I've journaled, and it's, not too strange that my mind is cluttered with all these thoughts and fears and anxieties, right? Like, let me take some time and have that little outlet for myself. So I think identifying the work and then holding yourself accountable to doing the work consistently is where you can see a lot of growth and a lot of progress. And, I think that next step after, you do the work yourself is, that's a continual practice and something that you'll do the rest of your life. But I think that next step is having a coach or a mentor or a therapist if you're going into like therapeutic type of topics and conversations and traumas and stuff. I think going to that will be the next level of having somebody else have an outside trained perspective and eye on, your current situation. So I know for myself, that's been really helpful for me because, you can do all the work that you want to do on yourself, but sometimes you can't see what it is that you need to work on. No matter how hard you try, sometimes you're like, I don't see the solution. I don't see another perspective. I'm only seeing mine. So I know for me in my life, having that outside perspective, even, our calls, we do weekly mentorship calls. It's the weekly coaches call, and we do it so that we can evolve alongside each other, because we really believe in leading by example and making sure that we're evolving in our lives. We are being our best selves, as well as reaching our goals and supporting each other with those goals. And how many calls have we had where one of us has just mentioned, well, have you thought about it this way? And then something like just kind of clicks and we're like, that is exactly what I needed. Which again,
and to go with that too,
mm-hmm.
I think it's not like having that help too. We talk about, well, what more could we do? But I think it's also one of those too, where it's like, you need to do something, but it's just not clicking for you to do. And so that's where the coach or the mentor or whatever is there to help you to really, ask those hard questions, or actually go and do those action steps, and really holding you accountable that way. Because I think those can be really big breakthroughs too, because it's one of those where you're like, I know I have to do it, I just can't do it. But when you really have that support and that guidance, that really allows you to go to that place. So I think that's also a really important aspect of it.
Yeah, I actually have like an example of that recently with a client where she had a target. She wanted in action, something steps she wanted to take, something she wanted to do, and she kept trying to hold herself accountable to it, and it wasn't happening. So one week I said, okay, fine. Email me by Friday with this item completed, and like attach it and show it to me. She had emailed to me the next day. It was like Tuesday. She's like, I don't know why. For some reason, the fact that I have to show it to you, like I will do it. And like, it's nice to have that at first. And I know throughout these 12 weeks, we're going to continue, or well, what's left of the 6 weeks, so we're going to continue practicing that. We're going to continue developing that, so that by the time she's ready to go, that will be more habitual for her, and she'll feel more comfortable holding herself accountable to it. But sometimes it really comes down to, I don't know how many of you are fellow people pleasers, but putting that into good practice.
Yeah. Oh, no kidding. Oh, Hannah, I love your mindset, because you're like, how can we take something that could be bad and make it better, right? Like people pleasing. Okay. Use it to hold you accountable.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. So last topic of the show, I want to get into burnout. A lot of people experience burnout, and I think they have this perception that they are doing too much. And I would actually say burnout is from doing too little of the things that make you your best. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think it could be both as well. But I really do think a lot of the times, like when, you ask a client a question, what are the things that make you the happiest? And they're like, music or going to a concert or a sunset or speaking with a friend or this and that. And you're like, okay, when's the last time you did any of those things? And they're like, I think like last month. And you're like, last month? This is not going to work out, you know? So what have you guys experienced either personally or with clients in regards to burnout? And what are some of the things that helped you to get more into a balanced state?
Well, when I love that you said it's not really about doing too much, it's about not doing enough, what like fulfills you. I know for me personally, the last couple months has just been the busiest time for me for work wise. And I kind of experienced that where I was like, I'm so burnt out and this and that. But then it's like because of the work that you've done for yourself, you do realize things like, well, no, it's because I'm not doing enough of anything. So really, especially when it comes to your job or whatever, if you're so busy, this is the exact time where you find time to do things for yourself because and just think of like performance, right? Like you can't give your 100% if you're like completely burnt out. And so it's even things where it's like taking more walks during the day or making sure that you do some self-care things before you start work so that you're more clear-headed and you're better energized to go and perform because if you're not doing enough of those things, you have nothing to give. And I know I learned that the kind of the hard way. And those are, I find that a lot of my clients that are so like, well, I have to do this for work, I have to do that for work. And I'm like, well, where's your mindset though? You know what I mean? Like if you're not giving enough time for yourself, how are you supposed to do all these things for work? So I think it's super important to realize that when you think you have no time, think about, well, what are you giving to that time? You know what I mean? And so um I can't think of what that saying is. Maybe I'll think of it in a minute. But it's it's about basically just like who are you giving your energy to, right? And who are you giving your time to? And if you can't say yourself, then you have to kind of reprioritize what that looks like so that you can give to yourself and you can give to others or your job or your work or whatever.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is so important because people think that when they're so busy that they don't have time for themselves. And I think it's actually the most important time for you to make time for yourself. And maybe you do have so much on your plate. And in that sense, maybe your journaling doesn't look like 2 pages every single morning and reading part of your book and, doing all these crazy, hour-long morning routines. Maybe it looks like a 5-minute morning routine where you get in a closet alone away from your kids or whatever it is. And for 5 minutes, you express gratitude. You maybe say a prayer or a meditation, and you do these little ingredients of your life that help you to perform better, think better, be more clear, and come from a more loving place. Because I know for myself, when my schedule is packed out and you get tired and you get exhausted, the chances of you coming from the most loving and compassionate version of yourself are a little bit lower than when you take that time to first fill yourself up. So I think that's really important. What about you, Hannah? What have you experienced as far as burnout?
I think it's important kind of to reframe it in a concept of when you look at typically when you experience something like burnout or you experience like you're overworked or you're overrun, people are like, you need to make time for self-care. Like, okay, cool, I'm gonna take a bath and feel better, thanks.
Yeah.
Like whatever.
Yeah.
But I think what we really need to look at is self-care through the lens of deeper. And I think self-care really is making time for those things that light you up, not necessarily chilling out, but going to have fun, going to do something that like just brings you life. I think that that's really valuable in a perspective of it's not just about resting because yes, yeah, you may need some rest. That's not wrong. But prioritize your bedtime and your sleep schedule and your sleep hygiene and all of that. But also I think that it comes from a space of doing the things that fill you back up. You can't pour from your cup into others when yours is empty. Like you just cannot. And I know that's an overly used phrase, but hey, I love it. So I'm going to keep using it. But
yeah, I had an exact experience with what you're talking about. There was a period of time where I was working and I genuinely love my work and I feel so fulfilled by it. But it is a lot of energy expenditure for me, whether it's a podcast or it's a coaching call or a mentorship call or whatever. It's a lot of energy out all the time. And I wasn't taking time to connect with friendships and deep relationships that I had in my life. And I felt empty and drained and I was just in a bad spot. And so I texted a friend. I was like, hey, can you hang out tonight? Like really last minute. And they said yes. And we went and hung out, and I came back full of energy, full of just like fulfillment and happiness. And I couldn't wait to like get back to work. I was just fully refreshed because I took that time to allow someone else to pour into me, you know? So I think what you're saying, I've definitely experienced that. And I think it's so valuable.
Yeah. I think too, like,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, to like rephrase that almost, or like relook at it. It's the idea of like, well, when your cup is empty, you think you need to rest to fill it up, but in actuality, you might just need to do things that generate more energy for you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, so good. You're such a teacher. I love it.
Yeah.
If you guys don't remember from the previous episodes, Hannah is a teacher, and now she teaches in the form of health and fitness and mentorship and things like that. So her examples are always so good.
I'm using my degree. Yay!
Yeah, you are. Amanda, did you have something to add?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think it's so important too, because we hear self-care so many times, but I think it's so important to really ask yourself, like, what does that mean for you, right? Because like for me, for example, I don't like taking baths. I think it's just I don't like it.
I did not expect that from you.
So really find something that actually is self-soothing for you. You know what I mean? And don't just go what everyone else is doing. Doesn't mean just getting your nails done and this and that. It could really just be something as simple as committing to your journal, reading a little bit, getting outside, taking a work break, not eating at your desk. So it could really just be anything, but make sure it fills you up, and it doesn't have to be this like grand thing that we have to do to make ourselves feel better.
All right. Last question before we end the show. Hannah, what is your favorite part about working with your Evolvex clients? What is the best part about it for you?
I think the best part for me is just building the relationships. Because the first check-in or two, we're still getting to know each other a little bit. They're not quite as open. But then now, we're in weeks 5, 6, 7. Like we're in that frame where people, like, we built the relationship, we have the connection. I know what your hobbies are. You know what mine are. I've told you about my life. I know about yours. And like just building the relationships, and that's the point where the change really, really, really starts to happen, because there's that trust factor that has developed. And that's honestly one of my favorite parts of the program, is once we've hit that point. And everybody's different. Sometimes maybe it takes a week, sometimes maybe it takes a little bit longer. But once we hit that point and we're able to really develop the relationship, and like the calls open up with genuine conversation that's like fun for both of us about how we're doing. And then it develops into the coaching side and into checking in, hey, how's your training, how's your nutrition? And like they're more honest, I understand their motives better, and all of that. That's when like the true shifts can really happen. I think that's probably my favorite part of the whole thing, is like the connection and the true relationships that are built in order to create lasting change.
Oh, I 100% agree. I think it's really neat to see, your clients start to trust you. And so it's almost like they start to trust themselves. It's almost like okay, like let's get to work type of thing, right? And I think just to piggyback off that, I think what I love about this program is I think sometimes clients go in with like an initial goal, say for, losing X amount of weight, but then they start to realize so many different areas of themselves that they could work out, and it just all kind of ties together. They make this breakthrough of mindset, and then now that their mindset, their foundation's kind of built, now they're able to get closer to their goals. So I think it's really just taking different steps and being open to different steps in different areas of their life to get to their goals. I think has been very, very cool to watch, and just to watch people make mental breakthroughs, I think has been really beautiful to watch for me.
Yeah. And something I've noticed with, some of the clients that we've had is, like Hannah was mentioning, sometimes it takes a little longer for people to open up, especially about these really big life topics. And so what I've seen is like, sometimes they'll go through the whole 90-day program, and then they'll sign up for the graduate program, and then they'll continue beyond that. And what's really cool is, we first kind of know them at this surface level when we first meet, because that's kind of everyone when you first meet, right? And then you get to know them deeper and deeper, and then you really get to see the beauty of like everything that they are and everything that they're going after. And like you guys are mentioning, it's just cool to be a part of that journey, and just, getting to have that experience of watching somebody literally experience life for one of the first times, and experience fulfillment and joy and drive and passion, like being able to see people actually experience that, I think is so rewarding, and definitely one of my favorite parts of the program as well. Well, we are going to end the podcast here. And is there anything else that you guys wanted to mention before we kind of sign off?
No. Yeah.
I said it's the confidence growth for me, like watching the clients grow through different
Oh,
things,
yeah.
like the self-confidence that is
Yes.
my favorite thing to watch evolve.
Yeah. Oh, it is the coolest thing because once they're confident in themselves, that really does translate into everything they do, all their relationships, all their goals, all their, you know, their business even. And I think that definitely is just the coolest thing to watch because we literally watch people come in one way and they like just leave. It's like they come in with this garden that has these, you know, sometimes these trees and these little plants that are like a little withered and there's like, you know, weeds and stuff. And we're like, hey, check out that weed right there. And then they choose to pluck it, you know, and then they choose to plant this new seed and this new beautiful flower grows. And then they leave with this like gorgeous garden. And we're like, yes, go get that, you know, yeah.
What's super powerful about that too is like the influence again that they don't realize that they're having on those around them. Maybe it's not in a fitness sense, but just, I mean, the way that our media and advertisements, marketing, everything works, it's to make you not feel confident in yourself. So you purchase a product. You know,
So
but
true.
if you are confident in you and then somebody sees that, that gives them permission to be confident in themselves. So it just keeps translating. And like, I love it.
Oh, we get the aggressively cute, like, I just want to squeeze our clients.
Like,
well, thank you guys so much for being on today's show and sharing your wealth of wisdom and advice. It's always very helpful. And these shows always, the audience always likes it a lot. So thank you guys.
Thank you for having
us.
Of course. If you guys, the listeners, are interested in being a part of Evolvex, our 2021 roster is currently full, but we will be accepting clients for a January 2022 start date. So we will accept applications, and then after we receive all the applications, we'll go through the process of contacting those that we believe would be the best fit for this January launch that we're going to have. So definitely check out the link down below if you're interested. Stay tuned to the Evolvex Instagram. It's evlv.x on Instagram, as well as our personal Instagrams. We'll definitely post about when we are accepting new applications, which should be either end of November or beginning of December for sure, because we want to have time to really go through all the applications that we get in order to choose the best selective group for January 2022. Thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of the Evolve with Emily show. We hope to hear you we hope to see you in another episode. That's it. I think words are hard at this moment. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.